Hello everyone, it's me, your average bonehead, Jay. And gee, I really just proved last time that Canadians can't do anything. Well then I guess I should remedy my mistake by showing some actually good Canadian-made content.
Let me tell you something about a friend of ours named Jimmy.
No, I said Canadian-made content, not a gift from the gods. And since it is the spooky month, I guess it's only appropriate to talk about Gloom is a Canadian animated show by Nelvana Productions that ran from 2006 to 2008, and it's based on the product line of the same name. This show stars our titled character, Ruby Gloom, as well as a decently sized, colorful cast of characters that make up Ruby's friends and the inhabitants of this household. And the episodes are about the random events they'll get up to from day to day. During its run, the show lasted for a grand total of 40 episodes, making up around 2 seasons, 20 episodes each, with the episodes all being about 22 minutes long. And after the show was over, it grew a bit of a cult following, having in my eyes a decently sized fandom for a relatively obscure show. And that's something I actually do like to see, because Ruby Gloom is a really good show. Okay, it doesn't have avant-garde storytelling, but it's another one of those shows that's definitely for a slightly younger audience, but it doesn't really play down to that audience. In fact, just the opposite. Some of the stuff they'll just randomly talk about, well, let's just say you wouldn't hear it in most modern kids shows. But before we get into that, let's talk about the animation. The whole show was done in Flash animation, and at times it is pretty easy to tell, notably whenever the characters turn around they are kinda funny looking. But otherwise, the animation is pretty good. It has one of my favorite things of every character having a semi-unique way of walking, and in some cases for them, dancing, as well as overall, despite the look and atmosphere of the show, the colors all manage to pop, especially on some of the more out there designs, and manages to make this relatively gloomy town of Gloomsville actually look like a pretty inviting place. Other things like the music of the show is also really good, especially its main theme.
We're gonna show you why.
It is just so darn catchy. Next up is the writing, and honestly, it's really good. The dialogue between the characters is very snappy, as they all have very good banter with each other, and it makes these weird looking characters and the crazy scenarios they're thrown in feel all the more real and natural. And speaking of the writing, this leads into the comedy. The comedy in this show can be pretty top tier. There's obviously the simple jokes that still manage to get a chuckle out of me.
Oh, you go first.
No, just go first.
But then there's some jokes in the show that actually just leave me mouth agape that they were able to get away with that.
And this is Misery the Third at Mount Vesuvius in Italy.
Ah.
As you can see, her vacation was a blast.
Oh, and did I mention that this show can be pretty unhinged sometimes?
My socks have never been softer. Thanks, Skullboy.
But on top of that, the visual humor and the running gags that this show has are also wildly entertaining. But all of that is trivial if the characters aren't good, and the good thing is, the characters are great. Amazing even. Starting off with our titular main character, Ruby herself, she's an entertaining main protagonist, as she is dubbed the happiest girl in the world, as she's consistently trying to look on the bright side of any situation, even if that's not the easiest thing to do.
Well, look on the bright side, Scaredy. I'm thinking.
One thing I really like about Ruby is despite her positive outlook on everything, she's not an overly happy character all the time, as there are many times where her limits can be tested. And even though it does happen frequently enough, seeing any time where Ruby actively looks annoyed at something is always kind of surreal. And one other thing about Ruby that I really like is that they actually do manage to subvert another trope about the overly happy girl by making it that Ruby doesn't actually like wearing the most flashiest colors ever, really keeping true to the gloom part of her name.
Saying all bats have to fly is like saying all girls have to wear pink. And we all know that's not true.
And while we're still on the topic of Ruby, you probably noticed that all of the other characters are monsters or some kind of Halloween-themed creature, with the exception of Ruby herself, as there's a bit of discourse as to figuring out what exactly she is. Some sources say that she's actually just a human, but I like to go with the fun theory that she's actually a ragdoll.
Triplet spawn!
I don't know, I just think it makes a bit more sense. But moving on from a character who we think is a monster to a character who actually is one, Skullboy. Skullboy is another fun character throughout this show, as well, one, as I showed before, he's obviously the main love interest for Ruby, but on top of that, he stands on his own because his main thing is that he actually doesn't know where he came from. So every episode he dons a new talent, thinking he descended from people who specialized in that.
I must be related to the great painter Michelangelo. My family tree connects me to the great Wright brothers. I must be related to famous documentary filmmakers.
And I think the really funny part about all this actually is less of the fact that he does this all the time, and more so that more often than not, he's actually surprisingly good at these talents. I guess he's just a walking jack of all trades. Next up is the adorable thrill-seeking Cyclops, Iris. Iris is Ruby's best friend, and as I just described, a thrill seeker. She is consistently trying to perform new stunts, as well as break new records.
Highest pitch screech? I can do that. Iris.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't.
She is by far the most reckless of the group, as she is also not too bright and easily distracted. But surprisingly, despite all this, I find that Iris doesn't really get annoying, as her just being absolutely adorable is enough to keep anyone invested in her. She also has these spring shoes that we actually saw her get in an episode.
Look at these great springs I found. Want to see how high I can get in them, huh? Do ya? Okay, here goes.
And she is frequently seen with them afterwards. She also has two pets, a giant flying worm named Squig, and a man-eating Venus flytrap named Venus. So clearly you can see she has her priorities straight.
That's a great idea, Ruby.
Afterwards, we have the fan favorite Bad Luck Banshee, known as Misery.
And I hate surprises. The last time I was surprised, that pack of wolves was ruthless.
Misery is a walking calamity, if a name like that wouldn't tip you off, as her main running gag throughout the entire series is her experiencing some form of traumatic pain in some over-the-top way due to the fact that her entire family is cursed with eternal bad luck. Most of the show's dark humor obviously comes from her.
The electrical current is drawn to the high lead content in our blood, and then boom! People use you to charge their batteries. My great-great-nana's keepsake, a piece of the Hindenburg.
Despite the name Misery and the consistent horrible things happening to her, Misery is a very endearing character, and while you do feel sorry for her and Misery herself is very pessimistic, she is still a joy to watch as the things that happen to her just manage to teeter over the line of actually funny and not too mean-spirited. This means she is in the eternal war with Iris over who gets to be my favorite character.
My cousin was struck by lightning. Twice.
Next would be the conjointed twins, Frank and Len. Get it? Frank, Len. That's actually clever. These two brothers are dumb rock stars. Emphasis on the dumb, because yeah, sometimes you have to question if these two actually have a brain. On the usual occasion, Frank is a bit smarter than Len, but other than that, these two are lost causes. They are very entertaining, though.
Frank, I'll go, you stay.
Len, that doesn't make any sense. I'm older.
Afterwards, there's Scaredy Bat, and if a name like that didn't tip you off to his personality, his constant mannerisms...
Ruby, if you please, perhaps there is another part I could play that is closer to the ground.
Definitely will. As you can guess, Scaredy is the overly paranoid one of the group.
It was a light and sunny day. How are you doing? Nervous?
I'm fine, I think. Keep reading, please.
After Scaredy Bat, there's the regularly recurring character of Boo Boo the Ghost.
Boo! Hey, Boo Boo. Yep, I'm glad everything's back to normal. Ooh! Oh, hiya, Boo Boo.
Which is the only character in this series I think everyone wants to smash with hammers. And then there's the Raven, Mr. Poe, who is the only major adult figure in the series. Yeah, if you couldn't obviously guess, all the other characters I just mentioned are children, or at least preteens, but they all live in one house, and Poe is not their parental figure. So... yeah, I don't think we should get into that now. Poe isn't so much an authority figure as he is sometimes a voice of reason. Or at least that's how he treats himself, even if most of the time he isn't correct on what he assumes.
I trust you will deal with the extras. As the star, I must focus.
He also has two brothers / bodyguards that don't ever talk, named Edgar and Alan.
Alan.
The last major character is Ruby's cat, Doom Kitty, and she is the only one of the group that doesn't actually talk. as instead she expresses herself via her body language and constant violin sounds. So given the fact that most of the time the characters can't understand her, you can assume she's usually the only one of the group with a functioning brain cell.
Oh, I get it, a party! Sorry, Doom Kitty, there's no time for a party now. Ruby's got a secret!
So yeah, it's really good that this show has basically no unlikable characters, as there's some merit to basically everyone in the cast. And as one would expect, they make it so that the episodes are all great too. Basically, almost every episode in this show is at bare minimum good, and an episode I would highly recommend watching. Though a few things to keep in mind is that 1, every episode begins and ends with these funny little shorts of the characters usually addressing the audience about something that has nothing to do with the episode. And 2, due to the length of the episodes being 22 minutes long, there is a good chance that the plots won't always be one consistent thing the whole way through. There's a good few episodes where while they will have one main thing that the characters are trying to achieve, half the time by the halfway point of the episode's plot will take a hard left into some other thing that the characters are doing that will somehow round about to them solving the goal from earlier. Case in point, the very first episode has Ruby trying to throw a May Day party for all her friends to celebrate the 1st of May, but she wants to keep it a secret from them. But this is hard because what she doesn't know is that Iris has read her diary and is misinterpreting this party as Ruby wanting to go away forever. And then halfway through the episode, Ruby ends up trying to retrace her steps to figure out why all her friends are acting weird. This all ends with Ruby figuring out this misunderstanding and then throwing the party to surprise them.
I'm smiling for real! Ow.
Despite the roundabout way of storytelling, trust me, you won't be bored, because the writing and characters are top notch and gives you a great hook to continue watching. I think the only episode in this recent rewatch of the series that I ended up not liking all too much would be the episode Deja Vu Again. It's your basic Groundhog Day episode, where a character will have a day that isn't so good and then it'll keep repeating and they'll try to make it better, but I think the way this show handled it wasn't as best as it could be. As the day ends up only repeating twice, Ruby has to host a celebration for the town and she ends up screwing it up. The next day, she tries it again, but does very little different, and screws it up again. But it's already by that point that she immediately realizes what she needs to do, and fixes all her problems by attempt number 3. Yes, 1, 2, 3. You're reminding me of Miller's show. Don't do that. Though unlike that, the writing and characters are still good enough so that I don't consider this episode a complete write-off. However, my favorite episode in this rewatch has to be Sunny Days. In this episode, Misery goes away for a family reunion, which we do see them in another episode, which causes all of Gloomsville to finally have a sunny day. Unfortunately, the sun is so bright and so hot, it's causing everything to dry out and burn up. So it's up to Skullboy and Ruby to go through some dark caves in order to find Misery and get her back. One thing I really liked about this episode is throughout the entire first half before they started exploring the caves, I was wondering the whole time where Iris was, since it's very rare that the whole cast isn't actually in an episode together. And then it just turns out randomly that Iris was just bouncing in the caves because she thought it was fun.
Hey guys, shouldn't we keep moving? Great, I'll lead the way. This way.
I told you this show can be insane sometimes. This episode does have it all, as it of course has some funny Misery moments, funny Iris moments, overall top tier jokes, and in my eyes one of the funniest moments when it comes to Ruby and Skullboy's relationship, as Ruby ends up trying to confess her feelings to him, but everything in the universe is stopping her.
Skullboy, I just think you're so... Come on, guys! Okay, in a minute, Iris. Skullboy, what I mean to say is...
Don't cry, Ruby.
I'm not crying.
These two are so adorable together. In the end, Misery returns home, and all the gloom is brought back to Gloomsville. So I guess it's a happy ending. So yeah, episodes from the show range from okay to great, and there's even a few musical episodes here and there. And all the songs from those episodes are just as great.
When you look on the bright or the barely enough light side.
I may be a skeleton, but I ain't no skeleton. I ain't no bones about it. A musical gene, I'm without it.
Overall, RWBY Gloom is just a really good show. It's relatively simple, but simple doesn't mean bad. In fact, I usually think simple means fun, and this is just that. This is a really fun show, and I highly recommend it for basically anyone, not just kids, but even some adults can like it too. Adults do like it too. It has good writing, good comedy, good characters, a nice world, decent animation, good music, and it's just good. How many other ways can I say it? Now, I'm your average bonehead Jay, and I wish you all a happy Halloween and a good night. Oh, you're still here. Well, since you stuck around for this long, you might as well like and subscribe, comment if you're feeling really daring. And while you're at it, you might as well follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jayskeletyn. Links down below. And if you just want to see more, you can check out the playlists or look at my last video. Now thanks for watching, and if you need me, I'm going back to bed